Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, we journey together into the shadowy world of ancient Japan, where the veil between the living and the dead is thin, and the supernatural reigns in the hearts of folklore. It is said that every culture has its own collection of ghost stories, each steeped in mystery, fear, and fascination. But Japanese ghost tales, in particular, hold a unique, haunting beauty. They speak not just of restless spirits and vengeful entities, but of deep emotions, unresolved tragedies, and the ancient bond between the living and the afterlife. These stories have been passed down through generations, whispered in darkened rooms, and share around flickering fires for centuries, their eerie echoes lingering in the air. In Japan, the supernatural is not merely something to fear. It is something to understand. Spirits, or yurei, as they are called in the language of Japan, are not the same as the ghosts we often encounter in Western stories. They are not just specters with unfinished business. They are, in many ways, reflections of the human soul itself, embodiments of deep sorrow, anger, and longing. To truly understand these tales, we must first acknowledge the complex relationship the Japanese have with death, spirits, and the unknown. The roots of these stories lie in Japan's early religious practices, particularly Shintoism and Buddhism, which provided the spiritual framework for understanding life, death, and the spirit world. Shintoism, with its belief in the divine essence of nature, sees spirits as an inherent part of the world around us. Kami, or spirits, reside not only in trees and rivers, but in the very air we breathe. The living and the dead are eternally connected in a cosmic web. And when a life is tragically cut short, when a soul is wronged, or when an untold story goes unheard, it can lead to a spirit lingering in the mortal realm. These spirits, unable to find peace, wander restlessly, bound by their emotions or unfulfilled desires. Buddhism, too, plays a pivotal role in shaping the Japanese view of spirits. The concept of reincarnation and the cycle of life and death suggests that souls may not find rest until their karma has been balanced or their spiritual journey completed. And so, when a life ends violently or unjustly, when anger and grief are too great to be reconciled, the spirit may return, seeking closure or retribution. In this way, Japanese ghost stories are not simply about horror. They are about the journey of the soul, its struggles, its desires, and the balance it must find before it can pass on. As we delve into these tales tonight, keep in mind that they are not just stories of the supernatural. They are deeply human stories, stories of love, betrayal, and loss. In many ways, these spirits are not simply objects of fear, but reflections of our own fears, our own vulnerabilities. They serve as a reminder of the delicate balance we must maintain in life, the balance between light and dark, joy and sorrow, the living and the dead. The legends we are about to explore have captivated generations of listeners, from the bustling streets of Edo period Japan to the quiet villages tucked away in the countryside. They are the stories told by old women around hearths, by wandering monks in mist-covered temples, by children huddled together in the dim light of lanterns. They are the whispers of ancient voices, carried on the wind, telling us not just of vengeful spirits, but of lessons long learned and forgotten. Each tale has its own texture, its own rhythm, yet all share a common thread. They are stories of the unknown, of those who cannot rest, and those who seek to understand them. As we begin, it is important to remember that these stories are not just meant to send shivers down your spine. They are meant to invite you into a world where the boundaries between life and death are fluid, where the unseen world is always just around the corner, waiting to be discovered. The spirits that we will meet tonight are not to be feared alone, but to be understood, as they embody the eternal human struggle between our desires and our destinies. Some of these stories are centuries old, while others have only recently taken root in the collective consciousness of modern Japan. Yet all share a timeless relevance. They speak to the things we cannot see, the emotions we cannot always articulate, and the spirits who linger because they have been wronged, forgotten, or betrayed. They are the manifestations of human suffering and yearning, and perhaps, in their own way, they help us better understand ourselves. As we move forward, I invite you to settle into the stillness of the night, to let the calmness of your surroundings envelop you. Let the soothing rhythm of my voice guide you deeper into this world of shadow and spirit. These tales are not meant to alarm or overwhelm, but to lull you into a state of peaceful curiosity, where the flicker of the supernatural is merely a whisper in the darkness. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let go of the weight of your day. For tonight, we are travelers in the world of spirits, guided by the ancient stories that have endured the test of time. In the moments ahead, you will hear of restless spirits seeking justice, of vengeful entities whose desires have transcended the boundaries of life, and of souls whose grief is so deep that it keeps them tethered to this world. These are the darkest Japanese ghost tales ever told, but as you listen, allow the quiet unease to be tempered with the soothing knowledge that these spirits, too, are part of a larger cosmic order. The balance they seek, whether through vengeance or redemption, is a reflection of the delicate dance of life itself. In the end, perhaps the greatest lesson these stories have to offer is this: the supernatural and the natural are not separate realms but interconnected parts of the same existence. And through these tales, we come to understand not only the world of spirits, but the world of the living, the delicate thread that binds us all together. So, as we embark on this journey, know that we do not face these dark tales alone. We are not mere spectators, but partakers in a timeless tradition that seeks to illuminate the shadow corners of the human experience. With each story, let your mind drift further into the night, and when the tales end, may you find yourself not frightened, but at peace. The spirits of Japan await. Let us begin. To understand the depth of Japanese ghost stories, we must first take a step back in time, to a period when the very fabric of the world was viewed through a lens of spirits and forces unseen. Long before Japan became a modern, industrialized nation, its people believed in a world where the boundaries between the living and the dead were often blurry. The ancient Japanese worldview was intricately tied to nature, where everything from mountains and rivers to trees and stones was thought to possess a spirit, a life force, or a kami. In this worldview, spirits were neither abstract nor distant. They were part of the very life around us, influencing daily existence, whether for good or ill. Japan's indigenous religion, Shinto, is the oldest belief system on the islands and plays a central role in shaping this understanding of the world. In Shinto, all things in nature are infused with kami, spirits or gods that reside in every living and non-living thing. These kami are not omnipotent gods, but are instead connected to specific elements of nature. A mountain, a river, or even an ancient tree could all house a kami, believed to be responsible for both creation and destruction. The idea that spirits inhabited all things naturally extended to the dead. The deceased were believed to become kami after death, joining the natural world's spiritual fabric. However, if someone died unjustly, violently, or with strong emotions left unresolved, they might not achieve peaceful transcendence, but instead would become restless spirits, or yurei, haunting the mortal realm in search of resolution. In this world, death was not an event that was seen as a clean break between life and the afterlife. Rather, it was viewed as a transformation, a journey. Death was a gateway, not a final departure, and so the spirits of the departed were always present in the world, often unseen but always felt. This belief in a continuous spiritual existence beyond death was not isolated to one's ancestors, but included all souls, those of family members, village leaders, and even those lost in violent acts or tragic circumstances. Death, in ancient Japan, was never far from life, and the idea that the spirit could linger, returning to the world of the living to seek closure, revenge, or simply peace, was a common part of the collective psyche. The other spiritual influence that shaped Japanese beliefs was Buddhism, which began arriving in Japan around the 6th century, weaving itself into the fabric of the spiritual beliefs already present. While Shinto focused on the spirits of nature and the living, Buddhism introduced ideas about karma, reincarnation, and the cycle of life and death. In Buddhist teachings, death is not an end but a transition, one of many in the endless cycle of samsara or reincarnation. Yet, if someone died with unresolved matters or without achieving spiritual enlightenment, their soul could wander in the cycle of rebirth, unable to move on. This gave rise to the belief that spirits of the dead could return to the mortal realm, trapped by their unfulfilled desires, regrets, or unresolved karma. The fear of such spirits and their potential to cause harm was something the Japanese feared deeply, as these restless souls could wreak havoc on the living, influencing the world around them. In ancient Japan, death and the spirit world were not regarded with the same fear and anxiety that we often associate with them today. Rather, spirits were acknowledged as powerful forces to be respected, revered, and sometimes feared. If one did not show proper respect for the dead or fail to perform correct rituals, it was believed that the kami of the deceased might become angry or vengeful, returning as malevolent spirits. It was common practice to conduct elaborate funeral rites and memorial ceremonies to ensure that the spirits of the deceased would peacefully transition to the afterlife, avoiding any potential wrath. In this sense, the rituals of death were just as important, if not more so, than the rituals of life. Over time, these spiritual beliefs evolved, and the tales of vengeful spirits began to intertwine with the cultural fabric of Japan. As the centuries passed, Japan became a land rich with stories of the supernatural, where every region, every village, had its own ghost stories, each tied to a specific place or historical event. These stories were not only a way to explain the unexplainable, but also to teach moral lessons, reflecting society's values, fears, and aspirations. One of the most enduring themes was the idea of justice and retribution. How wronged spirits, driven by anger, could return the world of the living to exact vengeance. These vengeful spirits, known as onryo, were often the subjects of many famous ghost stories. Their anger is so powerful they could cause natural disasters, illness, or death. These spirits did not simply haunt places. They had the power to harm the living, often in dramatic and terrifying ways. In many ways, the spiritual beliefs in Japan mirror the complex relationships humans have with death and justice. The idea that spirits could return to settle scores or right wrongs reflects a deep cultural understanding that not everything in life is easily resolved. Sometimes, the consequences of human actions stretch beyond the grave, and the ghosts of the past are not so easily laid to rest. The souls of the wrong do not simply disappear. They linger, and they seek out justice, whether through revenge or reconciliation. In medieval Japan, ghost story began to take on more vivid and detailed forms, often represented in art, literature, and theater. The kabuki theater, which emerged in the early 17th century, was particularly instrumental in bringing these ghost stories to the public. Actors would perform ghostly tales on stage, often with elaborate makeup and costumes to represent the tragic fates of the spirits. These performances not only entertained but also educated the public, reminding them of the importance of respecting the dead and the consequences of living a life filled with anger or regret. The stories were not just designed to frighten, but to caution, to warn people of the importance of maintaining spiritual harmony in their lives. As time went on, the role of spirits in Japanese society grew more nuanced. While the fear of vengeful spirits remained strong, there was also a growing sense of empathy and understanding. People began to recognize that not all spirits were malevolent. Some were simply lost, searching for peace or closure, while others sought reconciliation. In this way, ghost stories in Japan are often not just tales of terror, but reflections on the human condition. They are stories of love, loss, betrayal, and redemption, and they offer deep insights into the complexities of the human experience. The belief in spirits and ghosts did not remain confined to the past. Even in modern Japan, the idea of the supernatural continues to have a profound influence on culture and society. Ghosts and spirits still play an important role in Japanese horror films, literature, and television, demonstrating that these ancient beliefs continue to resonate with people today. But while the stories may have evolved, the themes remain constant. The spirits of the past are never truly gone. They linger in the shadows, waiting to be heard, to be understood, and to be remembered. In the coming stories, we will explore the darker side of these ancient beliefs, the restless spirits that haunt the living, the souls driven by vengeance and sorrow, and the ghosts who seek to right the wrongs of the past. These tales are not just stories of fear. They are stories of love, loss, and the eternal human struggle for justice. The spirits of Japan, both malevolent and benign, are bound to the living by a web of emotions that transcends death itself. They remind us that while death may come for us all, the emotional threads we leave behind never truly sever. The past, with all its regrets and desires, continues to linger, waiting to be acknowledged, understood, and perhaps laid to rest. In Japan, the spirit world is not merely a realm of shadows and fear, but a world of deep emotional resonance and unresolved longing. Among the most prominent figures in Japanese ghost lore are the yurei, the restless spirits of the dead, who, unlike other spirits, are unable to find peace and move on to the afterlife. These spirits are often depicted in ways that stir a sense of sadness and sympathy, for their plight is not one of pure terror, but a tragic existence, bound by the unfinished business of their lives. The word yurei itself comes from the Japanese characters, which can be roughly translated as faint or dim, and spirit or ghost. They're often described as spirits who have died under tragic or violent circumstances, lives cut short, full of emotional turmoil and unresolved issues that bind them to the earthly realm. The nature of these spirits in Japanese folklore is complex, and they are not always depicted as purely malevolent. While some yurei are indeed vengeful, driven by anger and a desire for revenge, many are simply lost, yearning for peace and resolution. The key to understanding the yurei lies in the cultural belief that death is not an end but a transition. A yurei is not truly at rest because they have not completed their journey, and thus their spirit remains tethered to the living world, unable to pass on to the afterlife. The concept of the yurei has deep roots in Japan's belief systems, particularly in Shinto and Buddhism. While Shinto emphasizes a deep connection to nature and the spirits that inhabit the world around us, Buddhism provides a framework for understanding the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. In Buddhist thought, death is not the finality that is often seen as in Western traditions. It is simply one stage in a cycle that continues until the soul achieves enlightenment and can move on. However, in the case of the yurei, something has gone wrong in this process. Perhaps the death was too sudden or violent. Perhaps there was unfinished business. Or perhaps the spirit was overwhelmed by the emotions of grief, jealousy, or anger. The result is a soul that cannot pass into the next life, forever wandering the earth in a state of anguish. One of the most powerful characteristics of the yurei is the emotional turmoil that binds them to the living world. These spirits are often portrayed as having died under particularly tragic or violent circumstances. Betrayed lovers wronged women, soldiers killed in battle, or those who met an untimely or unjust death. This emotional weight is central to their haunting presence. The yurei is not just a faceless ghost, but a person with a history, a life, and, most importantly, emotions that continue to pulse long after death. For the yurei, their lingering presence is not just about causing fear or terror, but about an emotional need to resolve something that was left undone, to seek justice, or perhaps to avenge the wrongs that were inflicted upon them. In many of the most famous yurei tales, the spirit's vengeance is a central theme. Perhaps the most famous example of this is the tale of Oiwa, a woman betrayed by her husband, whose spirit returns from the dead to seek revenge on those who wronged her. In stories like these, the yurei is not simply a shadowy figure lurking in the darkness, but a force of nature, something powerful and capable of influencing the living world. But the yurei is not always vengeful. Sometimes, the spirit's longing is driven by a desire for closure, a desperate wish to be remembered or to settle unfinished business. The longing for recognition or reconciliation can drive these spirits to appear to the living, seeking a final moment of resolution before they can move on. A defining feature of the yurei is the visual portrayal of these spirits. Often depicted in art, theater, and popular culture, the yurei is usually shown as a figure dressed in a white burial kimono, their long, unkempt hair flowing wildly, and their faces obscured or ghostly pale. This image has become iconic, instantly recognizable as the quintessential Japanese ghost. The white burial kimono is particularly significant, as it represents the traditional attire worn by the dead, marking the spirit's inability to transcend the mortal realm and enter the peaceful rest of the afterlife. In many yurei tales, the spirit is shown to be physically disheveled, as if they are trapped in an emotional and physical state of decay. Their haunting appearance is not just for fear, but as a manifestation of the unrelenting grief, anger, or sorrow they feel. Their appearance is a physical representation of their inner turmoil, their emotional state preserved beyond death. The yurei has also played a significant role in Japanese theater, particularly in kabuki and bunraku puppet theater, where ghost stories have long been a popular genre. In these performances, the portrayal of the yurei is carefully crafted, with actors donning elaborate costumes and makeup to embody the spirit's sorrowful or vengeful nature. The kabuki theater, in particular, often features tales of love, betrayal, and revenge, where the yurei seeks to settle scores with the living. These performances, while designed to entertain, also serve as a reminder of the emotional and spiritual consequences of unresolved feelings and actions. They remind the audience of the importance of dealing with grief, betrayal, and anger before they fester into something much darker. In many ways, the Uri embodies a central paradox of the human condition: how our emotions, once felt, do not simply disappear. They continue to shape our lives long after the events that caused them. For the Uri, the emotional weight of their untimely deaths, their unresolved feelings, and their inability to let go keeps them bound to the earth, unable to move on to the next world. This concept of lingering emotion, of unresolved desires, is not just a foundation of many Japanese ghost stories, but also a central theme in much of Japanese culture. The idea that one's actions and emotions are never truly finished, that they continue to ripple outward even after death, is a powerful and profound reflection on the nature of the soul and its journey. While the Uri is often viewed as a force of malevolence, it is important to remember that these spirits are not entirely evil. They are, in many ways, tragic figures, souls who suffer because they were unable to find peace. They are the product of a world in which death is not neatly separated from life, and in which unresolved emotions continue to haunt both the living and the dead. The Uri reminds us of the importance of closure, of the need to heal emotional wounds before they fester and grow into something darker, more consuming. The Uri is not just a figure in folklore, but a mirror of human experience. They are the reflection of our own deepest fears, desires, and emotions. In a sense, the Uri represents what we might become if we fail to acknowledge and confront our own emotional struggles. They are spirits who, unable to let go of their earthly ties, continue to wander, seeking resolution. As we listen to these stories, we are reminded that the greatest danger of all is not the ghostly spirit who seeks vengeance, but the emotions and actions left unresolved, the things we leave undone. For in that lingering, unresolved space, there lies a power that can haunt us even beyond death. In the stories that follow, you will encounter many Uri, some vengeful, some sorrowful, and some seeking nothing more than closure. But in each of these spirits, there is an echo of something universal: the human struggle for peace, justice, and reconciliation. In the restless spirits of Japan, we find not just a fear of the unknown, but the very essence of human emotion and the deep, lingering ties that bind us to the past. Among the many tragic spirits in Japanese folklore, none is as haunting or as deeply unsettling as the tale of Oiwa. Her story is one of love, betrayal, and horrific revenge, a tale that has been passed down through generations, its chilling echoes reverberating in the dark corners of Japanese culture. The legend of Oiwa is not merely a ghost story. It is a reflection on the human heart, the consequences of betrayal, and the unyielding nature of vengeance. Oiwa was a woman of extraordinary beauty, and her story begins with a promising life. She was married to a man named Iman, a samurai who, like many in Japan's feudal period, was bound by the harsh realities of a world built on honor, duty, and power. Their marriage, though based on mutual affection, was not without its challenges. But for all its difficulties, Oiwa's life was one filled with love and the warmth of family. She had dreams of a future with her husband, perhaps children, and a life of peace, an ideal that would be shattered by one cruel act of betrayal. The origins of Oiwa's tragic fate lie in Iman's desperation. As a samurai, he was bound by the rigid expectations of his social class, struggling to make a name for himself and secure his place in the world. He was ambitious, perhaps too ambitious, and it was this ambition that ultimately led him down a dark path. One day, Iman became entangled in a plot to marry a wealthy woman, a woman whose wealth would elevate his social standing and provide him the comfort and power he craved. This woman, named was the daughter of a powerful merchant, and her marriage would secure Iman's rise in society. But Oiwa, his wife, stood in the way of his ambition. In his mind, Oiwa was nothing more than a burden, a woman whose love and loyalty had bound him to a life of responsibility he no longer wished to endure. His desires for wealth and power consumed him, and so, in a moment of cold calculation, he made a terrible decision. Iman sought the help of a conniving doctor who promised to rid him of his wife and allow him to marry without the burden of Oiwa's presence. The doctor, an unscrupulous man with his own motives, concocted a potion that would slowly poison Oiwa, rendering her weak and sickly. The potion was delivered to Oiwa, and as the days passed, her health deteriorated, leaving her a shell of the vibrant woman she once was. But even as she languished in sickness, She remained devoted to her husband, unaware of the betrayal that was unfolding before her eyes. Her beauty faded as the poison took hold, and her once glowing face became pale and sickly, her once beautiful eyes dull with despair. She was becoming a shadow of herself, and yet, even in her weakened state, she clung to the hope that her husband would remain by her side, that he would honor the vows they had taken. But Imon's betrayal did not stop there. As Oiwa grew weaker, he began to distance himself from her, spending more time with the woman he planned to marry. His cruelty became more apparent as he ignored Oiwa's suffering and turned his attentions elsewhere. Oiwa, consumed with grief and confusion, confronted Imon, demanding an explanation for his sudden coldness and the strange illness that had overtaken her. It was then that the full extent of the betrayal was revealed to her. Imon confessed not with remorse, but with indifference. He had never loved her, he said, and now that she was no longer beautiful, she was of no use to him. He intended to marry and leave her behind, to discard her like a broken object. The revelation shattered Oiwa's world, and with it, her heart. She felt the sting of betrayal deeply, but it was the brutal cruelty of Imon's words that truly broke her. In her final moments, her spirit was filled not just with anger, but with profound sadness, a sorrow so deep that it became all-consuming. And yet, even as she lay on the brink of death, her soul was not at rest. She could not accept the injustice of her fate, the betrayal that had robbed her of her life and her love. It was this anguish that would transform her into one of Japan's most vengeful spirits. Oiwa died shortly thereafter, her body a grotesque reflection of the poison that had ravaged her. But death could not silence the rage that burned within her. Her spirit, fueled by the intense feelings of betrayal and despair, would not allow her to fade away into the afterlife. She became a Yurei, a restless spirit whose only purpose was to seek revenge on those who had wronged her. Her appearance, when she returned, was horrifying. Her once beautiful face was now disfigured and twisted, a grotesque mass of death. Her long hair, once flowing and beautiful, hung in ragged strands, and her eyes were hollow, filled with a terrible emptiness. Her appearance alone was enough to instill terror in anyone who saw her, but it was her thirst for vengeance that made her truly fearsome. Oiwa's spirit sought Imon, her husband, with a relentless fury. She would haunt him, appearing to him in the dead of night, her disfigured face a constant reminder of his betrayal. But her revenge was not a simple act of violence. Instead, Oiwa's spirit began to torment him in subtle, insidious ways. She would appear to him, whispering curses and dark promises of retribution. At times, her disfigured face would appear in mirrors or windows, her eyes locked in an eternal glare of accusation. Her presence was felt everywhere Imon went, a constant reminder that no matter how much he tried to escape her, he could not outrun the consequences of his actions. Imon's mind began to unravel under the weight of Oiwa's haunting. He became paranoid and delusional, unable to escape the relentless presence of his wife's spirit. His attempt to move on with his life and marry were thwarted by Oiwa's ghost, who would appear at every turn, her cursed image haunting him wherever he went. In his madness, he began to see Oiwa not just as a ghost, but as a living nightmare that would never release him from her grasp. The tale of Oiwa is one of the most famous Onryo stories in Japanese folklore, illustrating the devastating consequences of betrayal and the power of a spirit consumed by rage. But it is also a story of beauty. Oiwa's beauty, once a symbol of love and devotion, was twisted by betrayal and transformed into something far darker. Her spirit, forever bound by the anguish of her death, seeks not only revenge but recognition. Oiwa's story reminds us of the power of the emotions that linger long after death, and how unresolved grief, betrayal, and anger can manifest in terrifying ways. In Japan, Oiwa's story has become an integral part of cultural consciousness. It has been retold in countless plays, films, and stories, each rendition capturing the same core themes of love, betrayal, and revenge. It is a tale that continues to haunt the minds of those who hear it, a reminder that even in death, the deepest emotions can drive a spirit to seek vengeance. Oiwa's legacy lives on, not just in her haunting image, but in the lessons her story imparts about the dangers of betrayal and the destructive power of unresolved emotions. As we listen to her tale, we are reminded of the fragility of the human heart and the terrible consequences that can arise when that heart is broken. Oiwa's story is not just a ghost story. It is a cautionary tale about the strength of the emotions that shape our lives and how those emotions, if left unchecked, can haunt us long after we are gone. Among the most haunting figures in Japanese folklore, the Yuki-onna, or Snow Woman, stands as a tragic yet chilling symbol of nature's cold, unyielding power and the bitter sorrow of a spirit trapped between life and death. The tale of the Yuki-onna is one of beauty, death, and a sorrow that has been passed down to the generations, echoing across the wintry mountains and snow-covered plains of Japan. She is a ghostly figure, a spirit that emerges during snowstorms, her icy presence striking fear into hearts of those who encounter her. But behind her cold and fearsome exterior lies a deep sadness, one that tells a story of loss, betrayal, and the price of an unrelenting desire for revenge. The Yuki-onna's legend varies from region to region, with slight differences in her appearance and behavior, but at its heart, the story remains consistent. She is said to be a woman dressed in white, with skin as pale as snow and hair as dark as the night. Her beauty is ethereal, otherworldly, and it is often said that the very air around her seems to chill when she appears. But this beauty hides her true nature. The Yuki-onna is a spirit of death, and her presence is always accompanied by a sense of coldness and dread. In some stories, she appears as a beautiful woman to lure her victims, while in others, she is a horrifying figure, her face a mask of sorrow and rage, her breath turning everything she touches to ice. The origin of the Yuki-onna's legend can be traced back to the cold, mountainous regions of Japan, particularly the remote, snow-covered areas where winter storms are fierce and the nights are long. These regions, where the snow falls relentlessly, are the perfect backdrop for a spirit whose very essence is bound to the harshness of winter. It is said that she appears during the deepest snowstorms, when the world is blanketed in white and the cold is unbearable. She emerges from the storm, her presence so cold that it can freeze a person's breath and chill them to the bone. The Yuki-onna's appearance in these storms is often seen as a punishment, a reminder of the power of nature and the consequences of one's actions. In one of the most well-known versions of Yuki-onna's tale, she is said to have been a beautiful woman who lived long ago. She was a woman of great beauty, admired by many, but her life was one of great sadness. She was a victim of cruel betrayal, her love and trust abused by a man who promised her a future together, but abandoned her when she needed him most. In her heartbreak, she wandered into the mountains, lost in her grief. It is said that she perished in the snow, her body succumbing to cold, her spirit forever bound to the icy wilderness. It is in this moment of death, when she was most vulnerable and abandoned, that she transformed into Yuki-onna. Her transformation into a vengeful spirit was not instantaneous. The grief she felt in life became a driving force for her, and it is this sorrow that now shapes her actions as a spirit. Her beauty, once a symbol of hope and love, is now a mask that hides the depth of her pain. The Yuki-onna's story, much like that of Oiwa, is one of a woman wronged, her spirit forever trapped by the bitterness of unrequited love and the cruelty of betrayal. But where Oiwa's vengeance is driven by anger and a desire for justice, the Yuki-onna's sorrow is even more profound, as she is torn between her longing for peace and her need to avenge the wrongs that were done to her. The Yuki-onna, in many of the tales told about her, preys upon travelers lost in the snow. She appears to them, her beauty mesmerizing them, but her cold presence is undeniable. Some stories tell of her luring men into the snowstorms, where she freezes them with a single breath, leaving their bodies frozen in place, expressions of terror etched on their faces. Her breath is so cold that it freezes everything in her path, and her icy gaze can turn the warmest of hearts into solid ice. Her victims, unable to escape her grasp, succumb to the bitter cold, their bodies freezing in the same way her heart has frozen in sorrow. In other versions of the story, however, the Yuki-onna is not always a malevolent spirit. There are tales where her victim, upon seeing her beautiful face and feeling the chill of her presence, is spared if he shows the Yuki-onna kindness or compassion. Some versions of the story depict the Yuki-onna as a spirit who could be redeemed through an act of mercy or understanding, her cold heart thawed by the warmth of human kindness. These variations of the legend reflect the complexity of her character. While she is bound by the deep sorrow of her past, there is still the possibility of peace for her if only someone can reach through the cold and offer her the closure she seeks. In one such tale, A young man who encounters a Yuki-onna shows her compassion, despite her fearsome presence. Instead of fleeing in terror or attempting to fight her, he speaks to her, offering her understanding of her sorrow. The Yuki-onna, moved by his words, lets him go, sparing his life. Some versions of the story tell that the man later marries, and years later, he meets the Yuki-onna once more, who reveals her true identity. She tells him that it was his kindness that saved him, but that she could not let him live without knowing the truth of her spirit. The tale ends in bittersweet sorrow, as the Yuki-onna, realizing her own fate, disappears into the snow once again, leaving the man with a deep sadness and an understanding of the power of human emotion and the consequences of a broken heart. While the Yuki-onna is often portrayed as a vengeful spirit, the deeper message of her story is one of mourning and grief. She is a figure of profound sorrow, trapped in the endless cycle of longing and loss. Her heart, like the snow, is cold and unyielding, frozen by the pain of betrayal and the abandonment she suffered in life. Yet in her story, there is also a sense of redemption, a belief that even the coldest of spirits can be softened by compassion and understanding. In modern Japan, the Yuki-onna remains an iconic figure in ghost stories, films, and literature. Her image, often depicted as a beautiful, pale woman with long black hair and a flowing white kimono, has become ingrained in popular culture. Her story continues to resonate with those who encounter her, whether through the chilling winds of a snowstorm or in the dark corners of a dimly lit room. The Yuki-onna is a reminder of the dangers of neglecting the pain of others, of the power of grief to shape our lives and our spirits, and of the delicate balance between vengeance and mercy. The Yuki-onna's haunting presence is not just a tale of terror. It is a tale of the fragile nature of the human heart. Her sorrow is a reflection of the deep emotional struggles that all people face: loss, betrayal, and a desire for understanding. In the stillness of a winter's night, when the snow falls gently and the cold winds blow, the Yuki-onna's story lingers, reminding us that even in the darkest and coldest moments, there is still potential for warmth and healing. Among the vast and varied array of spirits in Japanese folklore, the Rokuro Kubi stands out as one of the more unsettling figures. These spectral beings, with their twisted and supernatural abilities, blur the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary. At first glance, the Rokuro Kubi may seem like ordinary women, no different from the many villagers, farmers, or townsfolk that populate the land. Yet when night falls and the shadows deepen, their true nature emerges, revealing a darker, more sinister side. The Rokuro Kubi are ghosts, but they are also shapeshifters, beings who can transform at will, exhibiting powers that defy human comprehension. The name Rokuro Kubi itself is derived from the Japanese words rokuro, meaning spindle, and kubi, meaning neck, reflecting one of the most distinctive features of these spirits: their ability to stretch their necks to alarming lengths. The Rokuro Kubi's transformation from a seemingly harmless woman into a grotesque and terrifying creature is a staple of the stories in which they appear, and it's this eerie duality between the ordinary and the monstrous that makes the Rokuro Kubi such an enduring figure in Japanese folklore. The origins of the Rokuro Kubi vary across different regions of Japan, and the tales surrounding them often offer diverse interpretations of their nature. In some accounts, Rokuro Kubi are simply women who are cursed, spirits condemned to a life of transformation and torment as punishment for their past actions. In other versions, they are depicted as malicious spirits, born of evil intent or lingering regret. What is consistent, however, is their ability to take on a dual existence. By day, they are indistinguishable from ordinary women, but by night, they undergo a terrifying transformation. It is during the night that their true nature emerges, and it is this dual existence that forms the core of the Rokuro Kubi legend. One of the most unsettling aspects of the Rokuro Kubi is their ability to stretch their necks to unnatural lengths. In some stories, their necks elongate to the point where they can peer into houses from great distances, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. Their necks might extend far enough to reach the ceilings or windows of nearby buildings, their heads twisting and turning as they search for victims. This grotesque physical transformation evokes a sense of horror because it defies the natural laws of the human body, turning an ordinary person into something alien and monstrous. The Rokuro Kubi's elongated neck symbolizes the disconnection between their human appearance and their supernatural essence, a haunting reminder of the fragility of the line between the living and the dead. The Rokuro Kubi's transformation is not limited to their necks alone. In some variations of the legend, they can also shapeshift entirely, changing their appearance to suit their needs. Sometimes, they may take on the form of a beautiful woman, luring unsuspecting men with their charms and beauty. Once the victim is entranced, the Rokuro Kubi might reveal their true form, terrifying a man with their monstrous, distorted features. In these stories, the Rokuro Kubi is often depicted as a seductress, using her supernatural beauty to entice and trap her victims. This seductive aspect of the Rokuro Kubi legend highlights the theme of duality once again. Their human form offers warmth and allure, while their true forms one of horror and terror. But it's not only men who fall prey to the Rokuro Kubi. In some stories, these spirits are depicted as malicious entities who torment entire families or villages, not limited to just one victim. These Rokuro Kubi might sneak into homes of the living, their elongated necks slipping through cracks in doors or windows to steal food or cause mischief. In some versions of the story, they are known to suck the life force from their victims, draining their energy while they sleep. This parasitic nature of the Rokuro Kubi's behavior adds another layer of fear to their myth. While their appearances are terrifying, it is their ability to feed off the vitality of the living that makes them particularly dangerous. As with many other spirits in Japanese folklore, the Rokuro Kubi are sometimes associated with karmic punishment or unresolved grievances. In some tales, the Rokuro Kubi is a spirit who has committed a crime or wronged others in life, and as a result, is cursed to wander the earth in this terrifying form. This punishment is both a physical transformation and a psychological one. The curse forces the spirit to confront its past actions through its grotesque metamorphosis, with each night a transformation representing the burden of guilt and remorse that the spirit carries. In this way, the Rokuro Kubi becomes not just a monster, but a reflection of the darker aspect of human nature, the consequences of selfishness, deceit, and unchecked desire. In other tales, the Rokuro Kubi is not always a malevolent force. Some versions depict them as tragic figures, women who, through no fault of their own, have been cursed to live with this monstrous ability. In these stories, the Rokuro Kubi may feel trapped in her dual existence, torn between the desire to live as a normal person and the uncontrollable urges that arise when she transforms. These tales focus more on the sorrow and isolation of the Rokuro Kubi, portraying her as a spirit struggling with her curse. The contrast between her human life and her nightmarish transformation creates a sense of tragedy, highlighting the theme of inner conflict and the struggle between one's past actions and the need for redemption. Despite the often horrifying nature of the Rokuro Kubi, there are also moments in her tale that reflect a deeper, more nuanced understanding of the spirit world. In some stories, the Rokuro Kubi is able to break free from her curse, either through acts of kindness, self-sacrifice, or the intervention of a compassionate person. In these tales, the curse is not an insurmountable obstacle, but something that can be overcome with time, patience, and the willingness to change. These stories emphasize the possibility of redemption, suggesting that even the most terrifying and malevolent spirits may have a path to peace. The Rokuro Kubi is not simply a symbol of terror, but a reminder that the human heart, despite its flaws and mistakes, is capable of transformation. The Rokuro Kubi also plays a unique role in Japanese ghost stories by serving as a metaphor for the fear of the unknown and the fear of transformation. Her ability to change, to take on multiple forms, reflects the anxiety many people feel about their own identities and the uncertainty that comes with change. The Rokuro Kubi embodies the fear of the self, of becoming something unrecognizable, of losing control over one's own body, and of the unseen forces that can shape our lives. She represents the darker aspect of human nature, the parts of ourselves that we often try to hide or suppress. In her, we see the consequences of ignoring our inner darkness, of allowing ourselves to be consumed by jealousy, greed, or guilt. Her story forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths, to acknowledge the parts of ourselves that are capable of monstrous things. The Rokuro Kubi remains a figure that continues to captivate and terrify. Her appearance in folklore and popular culture serves as a reminder of the complex relationship between humanity and the supernatural. She is a reflection of our deepest fears and desires, the fear of losing control, the fear of transformation, and the fear of facing the consequences of our actions. Yet, beneath the terror she inspires, there's also a sense of sorrow and tragedy, a reminder that even the most fearsome of spirits were once human, and perhaps, just perhaps, still carry with them a trace of their former selves. In the dark of night, when the wind howls and the shadows stretch long, the Rokuro Kubi continues to haunt the corners of the imagination. Her ability to stretch her neck, her seductive beauty, and her tragic curse all serve as symbols of the ways in which the supernatural can mirror our own human struggles. She is a creature of the night, but she is also a reflection of the night within ourselves, dark, mysterious, and full of secrets. Among the myriad creatures that populate Japan's rich folklore, few are as both mesmerizing and terrifying as the Joragumo, the Spider Woman. Her name, which translates to binding woman, is as sinister as the creature herself. The Joragumo is a shape-shifting spirit, a yokai who can transform from a beautiful woman into a monstrous spider at will. This dual nature, an alluring, seemingly innocent woman with the heart of a deadly predator, has made the Joragumo one of the most enduring and chilling figures in Japanese mythology. But beneath her fearsome appearance lies a tragic, complex narrative of isolation, revenge, and transformation. The tale of the Joragumo is one that can be traced back centuries, originating from the same mysterious, forested landscapes that have inspired many other supernatural stories. It is said that the Joragumo is born from an ancient spider, a creature that has lived for centuries, feeding on the souls of the living. Over time, the spider gains the ability to shift its form, becoming a woman whose beauty is both captivating and deadly. Some variations of the myth suggest that the Joragumo is not merely a spirit of the dead, but a creature of nature, a demon of the forest whose powers are deeply tied to the wild, untamed places of the world. In her human form, the Joragumo is often depicted as a beautiful young woman, charming, graceful, and seemingly harmless. Her appearance is that of a woman dressed in elegant kimono, her hair flowing long and dark, her eyes warm and inviting. It is this beauty that draws men to her, much like a fly drawn to a web. But while she may seem innocent and enchanting, there is an underlying danger in her presence, a hint of something not quite right, a quiet warning that the encounter may not be as it seems. The allure of the Joragumo is one of the most powerful aspects of her myth. She is a seductress, a temptress who uses her beauty and charm to ensnare her victims, pulling them into her web of death. The Joragumo's true nature is revealed when she transforms into her monstrous spider form. Her body becomes a gigantic spider, its black and red markings a sign of her danger and her otherworldly power. In this form, she is far from the beautiful woman she once appeared to be. Her 8 long, spindly legs stretch out, each one capable of ensnaring and crushing her prey. Her eyes, once warm and inviting, become cold and calculating, glowing with an insatiable hunger. This transformation, while terrifying, also reflects a deeper truth about the Joragumo. Her beauty is facade, a lure designed to deceive and trap those who are foolish enough to fall into her grasp. The web that the Joragumo spins is not only a physical construct, but a metaphorical one. She entangles her victims not just in silk, but in a psychological snare, a web of temptation, seduction, and deceit. The men who fall victim to the Joragumo are often lured into her lair by promises of love or affection, only to find themselves trapped in a deadly game where the stakes are their very lives. In some versions of the myth, the Joragumo will ensnare her victims, paralyzing them in her web, and then feast on them slowly, feeding off their life force. The pain they experience is not just physical, but emotional as well, for the Joragumo is not simply a predator. She is a creature that preys on the deepest desires and vulnerabilities of her victims. In some stories, the Joragumo is seen as a symbol of the danger of unchecked desire. She embodies the consequences of giving in to temptation without considering the cost. Her beauty is a reflection of the allure of the forbidden. The things we desire but should not have, the things that, when pursued without caution, can lead to our downfall. The Joragumo does not simply kill her victims. She twists their desires and uses them as bait, showing that even the most innocent-seeming things can be deadly when we fail to understand their true nature. The tale of the Joragumo is also a reflection of the darker side of femininity. She is both a symbol of female power and a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked beauty and seduction. Some stories portray her as a tragic figure, a woman transformed into a spider due to a curse or a tragic past. In these versions, the Joragumo is not an inherently evil spirit, but one who's been shaped by the cruel hand of fate. The curse that turns her into a spider is often the result of betrayal, heartbreak, or abandonment. This backstory adds complexity to her character. She is not merely a predator, but a creature driven by pain and a desire for revenge. One popular version of the Joragumo legend tells the story of a young man who, after being lured into her lair, is forced to confront the reality of her deadly nature. In this tale, the man eventually discovers that the woman he has fallen for is, in fact, the Joragumo, and that his fate is sealed the moment he enters her domain. As he struggles to escape, he learns of her tragic past, how she was once a beautiful woman, living a peaceful life, only to be transformed into a monster after being betrayed by a lover. The Joragumo story is a tale of bitterness, revenge, and the painful cost of betrayal. It serves as a reminder that unchecked emotions, particularly anger and resentment, can transform a person into something unrecognizable. While the Joragumo is often portrayed as a deadly, vengeful spirit, she is also a reflection of the power of transformation. Her ability to shift from woman to spider represents the duality of her character, her ability to move between two worlds, to be both beautiful and monstrous. This transformation is symbolic of the broader themes of change and consequence. The Joragumo shows that nothing is ever truly as it seems. What appears to be beautiful and alluring may hide a darker, more dangerous reality. She is a reminder that beneath the surface of even the most charming individuals can lie hidden dangers, and that our desires and emotions must be approached with caution. The Joragumo also plays an important role in reflecting the fear of the unknown and the fear of the natural world. In the rural, mountainous regions of Japan, the forest is a place of both beauty and danger. The Joragumo embodies this duality. The forest, which can offer sustenance and shelter, can also be a place where creatures like the Joragumo lurk, waiting for the unsuspecting traveler. The legend reminds us that the natural world, while full of beauty, is also a realm of unpredictability and hidden threats. The Joragumo's web is not just a trap for her victims. It is a reflection of the way the natural world can ensnare us if we are not careful or aware of the forces at play. In modern times, the Joragumo has remained a central figure in Japanese horror stories, films, and manga. Her image, both seductive and terrifying, continues to capture the imagination of those who hear her story. While she is often depicted as a villainous figure, her myth carries a deeper message about desire, transformation, and the consequences of our actions. She is a creature of beauty and danger, her allure impossible to resist, yet her true nature a warning of the costs that come with following our deepest, most dangerous desires. The Joragumo is a timeless figure, a spirit whose beauty and terror are intertwined in a way that speaks to the complexity of the human condition. She is a reminder that beauty, when unchecked by wisdom or understanding, can lead to destruction. She teaches us that the consequences of our actions, particularly our desires, can reach far beyond the moment, ensnaring us in ways we never anticipated. In the quiet corners of Japanese folklore, the Yurei stand as some of the most sorrowful and unsettling figures. These spirits are not like the mischievous or vengeful creatures of myth. They are the souls of the dead, but they are not at rest. They are the souls of individuals whose lives were cut short by violence, betrayal, or unfinished business, and whose spirits linger in the mortal world, bound by regret, anger, or sorrow. The Yurei are often depicted as figures of great sadness, their forms draped in tattered white burial kimono, their hair long and unkempt, their faces pale and expressionless. Their presence, though quiet and almost ethereal, is a reminder of the deep emotional wounds that can keep the dead from finding peace. The Yurei are often considered to be a specific kind of ghost in Japanese mythology, spirits who have not moved on to the afterlife because of the circumstances surrounding their death. Unlike other ghosts, who may simply appear as apparitions, the Yurei are deeply tied to the emotions and desires that remain unresolved at the time of their death. These spirits are typically bound by anger, sadness, jealousy, or a need for revenge, and it is this emotional intensity that prevents them from finding peace. In many ways, the Yurei reflect the human condition, how we are often held captive by our emotions, especially those that are left unaddressed or unresolved. The origins of the Yurei legend are rooted in ancient Japanese spiritual beliefs. The Shinto religion, which has long influenced Japan's view of the spirit world, posits that when someone dies, their spirit passes on to the afterlife. However, if a person dies in a violent or unjust manner, or if they are burdened by unfinished business, their soul may become restless. The Yurei is the manifestation of that restlessness. In traditional Shinto belief, there are rituals and offerings designed to appease the spirits of the dead, to ensure that they make a peaceful transition to the other world. If these rituals are not performed, or if the spirit is left unacknowledged, it can lead to the creation of a Yurei, a soul that is unable to find peace, forever wandering the earth in search of resolution. The appearance of the Yurei is one of the most iconic features of this legend. Their appearance is eerily uniform in most depictions. Pale, often with a ghostly pallor that seems to reflect their inability to move on from the earthly realm. They are frequently shown wearing the white burial kimono that signifies death, with long, unkempt hair that adds to their otherworldly appearance. In some versions of the tale, the Yurei have empty eyes, as though their souls have been hollowed out by grief or rage. Their faces are often obscured, reflecting the notion that they are not fully present, but rather a remnant of what once was. This ghostly visage serves as a visual reminder of the emotional weight that holds these spirits back from finding peace. The Yurei are often driven by the same intense emotions that led to their untimely deaths: anger, vengeance, or sorrow. The Yurei are souls who seek justice, closure, or simply recognition for the wrongs they suffered in life. In many stories, the Yurei are driven to haunt the living in order to right these wrongs. They may appear to those who wronged them in life, or to individuals who are somehow connected to their tragic fate. These spirits are often depicted as seeking retribution, but there are also stories where Yurei appear in a more sorrowful, pleading manner, seeking peace or reconciliation. One of the most famous types of Yurei in Japanese folklore is the spirit of the woman wronged in life. Many tales center on women who have been betrayed by their husbands, abandoned by their families, or harmed in some other way, and these wrongs prevent their spirits from resting. One of the most iconic Yurei in this regard is the tale of Oiwa, a woman whose betrayal and murder at the hands of her husband led to her becoming a vengeful ghost. But not all Yurei are vengeful. Many simply want acknowledgement for their suffering. These spirits are often portrayed as tragic figures, whose sadness is so deep that it binds them to the earth, preventing them from passing peacefully into the afterlife. The Yurei also have a strong connection to the natural world, particularly the forces of nature that symbolize death and the afterlife. Many Yurei are said to appear on dark, stormy nights, when the wind howls and the rain falls in sheets. Their presence is often signaled by a sudden drop in temperature or an eerie, otherworldly quiet that seems to descend on the area. These natural phenomena are not mere backdrop. They are symbolic of the boundary between the living and the dead. The Yurei exist in a liminal space between the world of the living and the world of the dead, and their appearance often signifies that this boundary has been disturbed or blurred. Their haunting presence is a reminder of the tenuousness of life and the delicate balance between life and death. In many Yurei stories, the spirits are often linked to specific locations, places where their deaths occurred, or places where they were wronged. These locations are said to be haunted, and it is there that the Yurei's restless spirit continues to linger. Often, the presence of a Yurei is marked by strange occurrences: doors that slam shut without explanation, cold winds that blow through closed windows, or the sound of footsteps when no one is around. These signs of the Yurei's presence are not merely physical phenomena. They are also psychological markers of the spirit's distress, a reflection of the emotional turmoil that prevents it from finding peace. The Yurei is not just a haunting presence. It is a manifestation of unresolved emotions and unfinished business. While many Yurei are associated with revenge or anger, there are also stories where the spirits seek compassion or resolution. In these tales, the Yurei is not a malevolent force, but a figure who is trapped in a state of longing and regret. These spirits are often portrayed as seeking out individuals who can offer them closure or help them find peace. The story of the Yurei seeking reconciliation reflects the belief that the living and the dead are inextricably linked, and that the actions of the living have the power to either bind or release the spirits of the deceased. These tales offer a sense of hope, that even the most sorrowful and restless spirits can be calmed, that the emotional wounds of the past can be healed, and that the dead can be put to rest. The Yuri legend also highlights the cultural importance of honoring the dead. In Japan, ancestor worship and the proper observance of funeral rites are crucial parts of spiritual life. These rituals are not just for the dead. They are a means of ensuring that the spirits of the deceased are treated with respect and that their souls can transition peacefully to the afterlife. The stories of the Yuri serve as a reminder that the living must fulfill their duties to the dead, and that failure to do so can result in the creation of restless spirits who cannot find peace. These spirits, trapped by their own emotions and the injustices they suffered in life, continue to haunt the living, reminding them of the importance of closure, respect, and the acknowledgement of suffering. As the Yuri legend has evolved, so too has its place in modern culture. Today, the Yuri remains a central figure in Japanese horror films, literature, and art, where the spirits are often portrayed as tragic figures. Their mournful cries and ghostly appearances continue to capture the imagination, serving as reminders of the unresolved emotions that can linger long after death. In these modern depictions, the Yuri has become a symbol of both fear and sympathy, a figure who embodies the emotional weight of loss, grief, and the inability to move on. The Yuri is a powerful symbol of the human condition, a reflection of how unresolved emotions, whether anger, sorrow, or regret, can continue to haunt us long after they are supposed to have been laid to rest. These restless spirits remind us of the delicate nature of life and death, and how the bonds between the living and the dead are shaped by the emotional legacies we leave behind. The Yuri is a figure whose presence is both unsettling and melancholic, a reminder that the past is never truly gone, and that the spirits of those who came before us may continue to shape our lives long after they are gone. High in the misty mountains of Japan, where the winds howl through dense forests and the peaks touch the clouds, the Tengu reign. These enigmatic beings have long captured the imagination of the Japanese people, embodying both the divine and the demonic. The Tengu are spirits of the mountains, creatures that exist on the border between the human world and the realm of the gods. Though they are often portrayed as mischievous, their role in Japanese folklore is far more complex, blending elements of wisdom, trickery, and spiritual power. The Tengu is both a guardian and a trickster, a being of great strength and great mischief, whose appearance can vary from that of a bird-like creature to a human form with supernatural abilities. The origins of the Tengu can be traced back to ancient Japan, where early stories depicted them as bird-like creatures that lived in the remote mountains, far from human civilization. Their appearance, with sharp, bird-like features, feathers, and beaks, hinted at their connection to the natural world, specifically the world of the birds. In these early myths, the Tengu were often seen as creatures of great power, feared and revered by local villagers. Over time, however, the Tengu evolved into more complex figures, blending elements of human and animal traits, reflecting the dual nature of their character, part divine, part mischievous. The Tengu's dual nature is perhaps best exemplified by its conflicting roles in Japanese culture. On one hand, the Tengu is seen as a guardian spirit, a protector of the mountains and forests. In this aspect, the Tengu is a benevolent force, watching over the wilderness and ensuring that it remains undisturbed by the encroachment of humans. In this role, the Tengu is often associated with the Shinto gods, particularly those of the mountains and forests. The Tengu's connection to these deities reflects its role as a spiritual being, one whose power is drawn from a natural world and the sacred places that humans cannot easily reach. The Tengu is a spirit that is both fierce and protective, and it is said to help those who are lost in the mountains, guiding them back to safety. However, the Tengu is also a creature of mischief, and it is this trickster nature that has captured the popular imagination. In many stories, the Tengu is depicted as a prankster, delighting in causing confusion and trouble for humans. Whether it is by leading travelers astray, stealing their belongings, or playing tricks on unsuspecting villagers, the Tengu's mischievous side is a key part of its identity. In these tales, the Tengu serves as a reminder of the unpredictable and capricious nature of the natural world. The Tengu shows that while the mountains and forests may be beautiful and sacred, they are also places of danger and uncertainty. The Tengu's tricks serve as a form of balance, reminding humans that the forces of nature cannot be controlled, and that there is always a degree of unpredictability in the world. One of the most distinctive features of the Tengu is its appearance. In earlier depictions, the tengu was shown as a bird-like creature with a beak, feathers, and wings. These early images were meant to emphasize the tengu's connection to the natural world, to the birds of the mountain forests. Over time, however, the tengu began to take on a more human form, with some variations of the legend showing them as human-like beings with bird features, such as long, sharp noses or feathered wings. These tengu are often depicted wearing robes or armor, reflecting their status as both spirits and warriors. In some versions of the tale, the tengu is shown as a monk or ascetic meditating in the mountains and practicing spiritual discipline. This portrayal of the tengu as a monk is especially significant, as it links the tengu to the Buddhist tradition, where they are sometimes seen as guardians of Buddhist teachings or practitioners of esoteric spiritual practices. Despite their human-like features, the tengu retain their connection to the animal world. Their sharp bird-like noses and the presence of wings or feathers in their appearance are reminders of their true nature as creatures of the wilderness. The tengu's hybrid form, part human, part bird, is a reflection of its role as a bridge between the human world and the supernatural world. It is said that the tengu can fly between these worlds with ease, moving effortlessly between the realm of the living and the world of the gods. This ability to traverse between worlds is part of what makes the tengu so powerful, and it is one of the reasons why they are both feared and respected by those who live near the mountains. The tengu's connection to wisdom is another important aspect of its mythology. In many stories, the tengu is depicted as a teacher, a spiritual guide who imparts knowledge to those who seek it. This is especially true of the tengu found in the mountains of Japan, where they are often associated with ascetic practices and the pursuit of enlightenment. In these versions of the myth, the tengu serves as a mentor to wandering monks, offering guidance in the form of difficult lessons and spiritual tests. These tests are not always easy, and the tengu's mischievous side often comes through in the form of challenges or riddles that must be solved before the seeker can continue on their journey. This aspect of the tengu reflects the Buddhist belief that true wisdom is not easily attained, and that one must face trials and tribulations before reaching enlightenment. However, the tengu's wisdom is not always easily understood by humans. In some stories, the tengu is shown as a teacher who is difficult to approach or understand, a being whose lessons are shrouded in mystery. The tengu's lessons often come in the form of paradoxes, puzzles, or strange occurrences that challenge the human mind. This makes the tengu both a guide and a test, a spirit whose wisdom can be both enlightening and frustrating. The tengu teaches that wisdom is not something that can be simply given. It must be earned, and the path to understanding is often winding and unpredictable. In some versions of the tengu myth, the spirit is also associated with martial arts. The tengu is sometimes depicted as a warrior, a skilled fighter who possesses supernatural strength and agility. In these stories, the tengu is shown training in the mountains, honing their skills and learning the ways of combat. This martial aspect of the tengu is significant, as it reflects the spirit's role as both a protector and a challenger. The tengu's martial prowess makes them both a force to be reckoned with, and a figure who embodies the concept of discipline and self-mastery. The tengu teaches that strength is not just physical, but also mental and spiritual. True power comes from understanding oneself and mastering both one's body and one's mind. The tengu's mischievous side often comes into play when humans venture too far into the mountains or try to exploit the natural world. In these instances, the tengu may appear to punish those who show disrespect or greed. Travelers who try to steal from the mountains or who fail to honor the sacredness of the land may find themselves the target of the tengu's tricks. These pranks can range from harmless tricks, like leading a traveler in circles, to more severe forms of punishment, like making the thief lost or causing them to lose their way completely. In these stories, the tengu serves as a reminder that the natural world must be respected and that the forces of nature are not to be trifled with. Despite the tengu's trickster nature, it is also a figure of deep wisdom, a creature that can teach profound lessons to those who are willing to listen. The tengu embodies a complex relationship between humanity and nature, how we are both part of the natural world and separate from it, how we seek knowledge and enlightenment while also being subject to the unpredictable forces that govern life. The tengu is both a protector and a teacher, a guide who shows us that the path to wisdom is not always straightforward, and that we must be prepared to face challenges and mysteries along the way. The Tengu's legend continues to thrive in modern Japanese culture, appearing in folklore, manga, and films. Its dual nature as a mischievous spirit and a wise protector ensures that it remains a captivating figure, one whose lessons and tricks continue to intrigue and inspire. The Tengu is a reminder of the power and mystery of the mountains, and of the wisdom that can be found when we approach the natural world with respect, humility, and a willingness to learn. In the cool, murky depths of rivers and ponds across Japan, there lurks a creature both feared and fascinating, a creature whose presence is woven deeply into the fabric of Japanese mythology, the kappa. This water demon is one of the most iconic figures in Japanese folklore, known for its strange amphibious nature and its ability to play tricks, cause mischief, and even harm those who dare to approach its domain. However, beneath the terror the kappa instills, there are also tales of redemption, wisdom, and the balance between humanity and the natural world. The kappa is a multifaceted creature, with a reputation as both a mischievous trickster and a fearsome demon, and its story continues to be one that captivates and haunts the imagination. The kappa is most often depicted as a humanoid creature with the body of a turtle, covered in greenish skin that is slick and slimy, much like the surface of the water in which it lives. Its face is often said to resemble that of a monkey, with a wide mouth and sharp teeth. Perhaps the most distinguishing feature of the kappa, however, is the bowl-like depression on its head, filled with water. This dish is said to be the source of the kappa's strength and power. Without water in this depression, the kappa becomes weak and can be easily overpowered. It is this peculiar feature that sets the kappa apart from other creatures in Japanese mythology, and its vulnerability becomes an important part of the stories that surround it. The kappa's habitat is typically confined to bodies of water, rivers, ponds, and lakes, places that have long been associated with both danger and mystery. These areas, often dark and secluded, are ideal for the kappa to carry out its mischief and threats. In earlier legends, the kappa was often blamed for strange occurrences near water, such as drowning deaths, disappearances, and unexplainable accidents. Villagers believed that the kappa would drag people, particularly children, into the water and drown them, using its powerful arms and legs to subdue its victims. The kappa's love for human flesh, especially that of young children, made it a creature to be feared, and countless warnings were issued to children to avoid swimming alone near dangerous waters. However, the kappa's malevolent side does not stop at drowning. In many tales, the kappa is also a thief, notorious for stealing food or livestock from villages. It was said that the kappa had a particular fondness for cucumbers, and would often make deals with humans or play pranks in order to get its hands on this tasty treat. The kappa's love of cucumbers became so widespread in Japanese folklore that offerings of cucumbers are still sometimes made to appease the kappa in certain areas, especially during the summer months when the creature is said to be most active. This mischievous nature ties the kappa to the realm of trickster spirits, as it delights in causing trouble for humans, especially those who are unwary or careless near the water. Despite the fear it inspires, there are also stories in which the kappa is shown to be more than just a malicious creature. Some versions of the myth suggest that the kappa can be tricked, and in some cases, even tamed or befriended. One key aspect of the kappa's behavior is its obsession with politeness. According to many tales, if a human bows to the kappa in greeting, the creature will automatically bow back out of respect. However, this simple act of politeness has a profound consequence. When the kappa bows, the water in the dish on its head spills out, causing the creature to lose its strength. This vulnerability can be exploited by clever humans who, by bowing, cause the kappa to weaken and fall into a state of helplessness. In some stories, the kappa is bound by its own sense of etiquette, and its adherence to these social customs can be used against it. In these stories, the kappa's vulnerability is revealed, its need for respect, and its desire to follow certain social rules. This aspect of the kappa's character humanizes it to some extent, transforming it from a mindless demon into a creature governed by manners and traditions. This vulnerability also serves as a reminder of the balance between humanity and the natural world. In many ways, the kappa is a creature that reflects a delicate balance of respect, etiquette, and power. By understanding the kappa's nature and using wisdom, humans can subvert its tricks and even make peace with the creature, avoiding its more harmful tendencies. The kappa is not solely a creature of malevolence or mischief. It also has a more profound side that reflects the relationship between humans and the natural world. In certain stories, the kappa is seen as a guardian of rivers, ponds, and lakes, protecting the waterways from harm and maintaining balance in the ecosystem. In these versions of the myth, the kappa is not the antagonist but a protector, ensuring that humans do not exploit the natural world beyond its capacity. This side of the kappa highlights its connection to water as a source of life and death, an element that sustains and nurtures, but can also destroy if disrespected. In some folk tales, the kappa is depicted as a keeper of knowledge. It is said that the kappa can perform certain rituals, help farmers irrigate fields, or offer advice on how to maintain harmony with the land and water. This portrayal reflects the idea that the kappa is a creature of both wisdom and power, whose relationship to humans is not merely one of conflict, but also one of guidance. In these versions of the myth, the kappa serves as a teacher, imparting knowledge that can help humans live in balance with nature. The kappa thus embodies the idea that the natural world is not simply a place to be feared, but a source of wisdom that can teach us important lessons about harmony, respect, and coexistence. Despite the varied depictions of the kappa, one of its most enduring traits is its association with water. Water in Japanese mythology holds a special significance. It is both life-giving and destructive, a symbol of purification and renewal, but also a force capable of great violence. The kappa embodies both of these aspects of water, as it can be a nurturing force, helping to maintain balance in the environment, but it can also be a dangerous predator, preying on the unwary. The kappa's relationship to water reminds us of the dual nature of the elements in the natural world, how they sustain life, but can also take away if not treated with respect. The legend of the kappa continues to thrive in modern Japan, where it is often featured in popular culture, including films, books, and even as part of the summer festivals. Its image, both terrifying and endearing, remains a powerful symbol of the unpredictable forces of nature. In contemporary retellings, the kappa often appears as a comical or playful character, reflecting its role as a trickster, but its more malevolent side is never far behind. The kappa serves as a reminder of the dangers that can lurk in the natural world, but also the ways in which humans can interact with the environment in more balanced and respectful ways. Whether it is feared as a demon, revered as a guardian, or celebrated as a playful spirit, the kappa occupies an important place in Japanese folklore. Its stories reflect the complexities of our relationship with nature, the elements, and the creatures that inhabit the world alongside us. The kappa teaches us that even the most dangerous beings can have vulnerabilities, and that wisdom, respect, and a bit of cleverness can sometimes turn a formidable foe into a creature of wonder and fascination. Among Japan's vast pantheon of ghostly figures, the Rokuro Kubi is one of the most unsettling and peculiar. These supernatural beings, often depicted as women, are best known for their ability to stretch their necks to impossible lengths, a feature that has made them both fascinating and terrifying in Japanese folklore. The Rokuro Kubi is not a single entity, but rather a type of ghost or yokai, and their tales speak to themes of transformation, the boundaries between the living and the dead, and the strange, sometimes disturbing, nature of human desires. Their stories are often wrapped in mystery and supernatural horror, but they also carry deeper, more philosophical lessons about identity, shame, and the limitations of the human form. The Rokuro Kubi's most defining characteristic is their ability to extend their necks far beyond what is natural. In many stories, their necks can stretch to several meters in length, twisting and contorting in ways that defy the normal laws of physics. This grotesque ability is not something they can control at will, but is often a mark of their supernatural nature. In some versions of myth, the Rokuro Kubi can only stretch their necks while they sleep, often unaware of their actions. In others, the stretching of their necks is a deliberate act, away from the feed on their prey, or to frighten and torment humans. The origins of the Rokuro Kubi myth can be traced back to early Japanese folklore, and is often linked to stories about ghosts, spirits, and shapeshifters. In these tales, the Rokuro Kubi are typically portrayed as women who have died under mysterious or violent circumstances, and their unnatural abilities are seen as a manifestation of their restless spirits. Some stories suggest that these ghosts were once ordinary women who, due to some form of wrongdoing, were transformed into Rokuro Kubi as punishment. The stretching of their necks symbolizes the unnatural and painful distortion of their lives and spirits, and their torment is often a result of their inability to move on to the afterlife. Despite their terrifying abilities, Rokuro Kubi are often depicted as tragic figures rather than purely evil spirits. In many variations of the story, they are not born from malice or vengeance, but rather from a deep, unresolved grief or pain. Some versions suggest that these ghosts were once beautiful women, loved and cherished by those around them, but their untimely deaths, whether through violence, betrayal, or misfortune, transformed them into the eerie beings they are today. In these interpretations, the Rokuro Kubi embodies the deep emotional scars left by unresolved loss in a way that such pain can warp a soul into something unrecognizable. The stretching neck of the Rokuro Kubi is not merely a grotesque physical feature. It is also symbolic of the stretching and distortion of their identity. In some interpretations, the Rokuro Kubi's ability to elongate their necks represents the loss of control they have over their own lives and spirits. Their transformation from human to yokai signifies their inability to reconcile with their past, and the image of the stretching neck becomes a metaphor for the emotional and spiritual distance they must travel in order to find peace. This image speaks to the themes of regret and isolation, how certain experiences or emotions can stretch the very fabric of one's identity, causing a rift between who we were and who we become. While the Rokuro Kubi's elongated neck is the most striking feature, their other behaviors and abilities add to their eerie nature. In some legends, the Rokuro Kubi is also capable of transforming into other forms, such as animals or even objects. This ability to change shape reflects their internal disarray, their attempts to escape their past or to mask their true selves from the world. The shape-shifting abilities of the Rokuro Kubi often manifest during their moments of grief or distress, further emphasizing connection between their supernatural nature and their emotional turmoil. This capacity for transformation makes them elusive and unpredictable, and their actions are not driven by logic, but by the raw emotional energy that flows through them. Though they are typically associated with haunting humans, the Rokuro Kubi are not always malevolent. In some stories, they are simply misunderstood creatures who are unaware of the harm they cause. Their actions may appear monstrous, but they are not driven by cruelty. Rather, they are driven by a need to cope with the grief and pain that define their existence. This tragic nature often evokes sympathy from those who encounter them. In these tales, the Rokuro Kubi serves as a reminder of the powerful impact that unresolved emotions and trauma can have on a person, even after death. The transformation of a beautiful woman into a grotesque being serves as a potent visual metaphor for how unaddressed pain can deform not just the spirit, but also the body. In some legends, the Rokuro Kubi is shown as having a particular connection to the night. During the day, they appear as ordinary women, going about their daily lives without any sign of their supernatural nature. However, when night falls, they become the monstrous versions of themselves, their necks stretching and twisting as they haunt the living. This duality, normal by day, terrifying by night, further emphasizes the tension between the human and the supernatural that the Rokuro Kubi embodies. The Rokuro Kubi's transformation at night symbolizes the idea that our darker selves are often hidden beneath the surface, emerging only when we are most vulnerable. It serves as a reminder of the hidden forces within us, forces that are sometimes beyond our control, much like the stretching of the Rokuro Kubi's neck. The Rokuro Kubi's haunting of humans often involves them seeking attention or admiration, sometimes out of loneliness, sometimes to feed off the energy of the living. In one story, the Rokuro Kubi is said to approach a young man and, using her elongated neck, lures him into a trap. She wraps her neck around him, pulling him into her embrace, only to reveal her true nature as a ghostly figure with distorted, terrifying face. Yet, in some versions of the tale, the Rokuro Kubi's motives are not malicious. Instead of harming the young man, she simply wishes to be seen and acknowledged, a reflection of her desire for connection after a life that was marred by isolation and neglect. The story of the Rokuro Kubi shows that even the most terrifying of spirits may simply be seeking what was denied to them in life: love, companionship, and understanding. The legend of the Rokuro Kubi also draws attention to the theme of inner transformation. The stretching of their necks is a symbol not just of their physical transformation, but of the emotional and spiritual distortions that occur when grief, regret, or unfulfilled desires are allowed to fester. The Rokuro Kubi's tale invites reflection on the importance of confronting one's emotions and unresolved issues before they become overwhelming. Their stretching necks may serve as a warning about the dangers of repressing pain or trying to escape from it through supernatural means. In the Rokuro Kubi's case, their transformation into monstrous creatures is a reflection of their inability to reconcile their past, a cautionary tale about the consequences of leaving wounds unhealed. Interestingly, there are versions of the Rokuro Kubi myth where the ghostly transformation can be reversed, where the spirit can find peace. In these stories, the key to overcoming the Rokuro Kubi's monstrous nature is forgiveness, acceptance, or the acknowledgement of the wrongs they have suffered. Through these redemptive moments, the Rokuro Kubi can return to their human form, their necks returning to normal, and their spirits freed from the tormented existence they have led. These variations offer a glimmer of hope, suggesting that even the most tortured souls can find solace if they are allowed the chance to heal. The Rokuro Kubi remains a powerful figure in Japanese folklore, embodying the complex relationship between human nature and the supernatural. While they may strike fear into the hearts of those who encounter them, they also invite reflection on the fragility of the human spirit and the dangers of unaddressed emotional wounds. The image of the Rokuro Kubi, with her stretching neck, grotesque yet tragic, is a haunting reminder that even in the supernatural realm, the human soul is deeply affected by its experiences, and that the past, no matter how far gone, can stretch into the present in ways that are often beyond our control. Deep in the shadowed corners of the forests and mountains, where the air is thick with mist and the trees seem to whisper ancient secrets, there lurks a creature of both beauty and terror, the Joragumo. This yokai, often referred to as a spider woman, has captivated the imagination of the Japanese for centuries, embodying themes of seduction, deception, and the dark power of transformation. The Joragumo is a creature that walks the line between the human and the monstrous, a demon whose haunting beauty masks her true, horrific nature. Known for her ability to shapeshift into a beautiful woman and deceive unsuspecting men, the Joragumo represents the danger of unchecked desire and the seductive power of appearances. The Joragumo is often described as a spider, but not just any spider. She is an enormous, terrifying arachnid capable of spinning webs large enough to ensnare entire humans. Her true form is that of a monstrous spider with the upper body of a woman, her long, hairy legs extending from her body in a twisted, grotesque imitation of a human's. However, it is her ability to transform into a beautiful woman that makes her so dangerous. The Joragumo lures men to her lair, often using her charm, beauty, and wit to gain their trust. She may appear as a helpless maiden in need of rescue, or as a seductive woman who draws men into her web, both literally and figuratively. In some versions of the myth, the Joragumo is said to have the ability to create an illusion of a serene, idyllic environment, convincing her victims to let down their guard. Once they are within her grasp, she reveals her true nature, ensnaring them in her web and devouring them, sometimes even draining their blood. The Joragumo's ability to transform from a deadly spider into a beautiful woman reflects the broader theme of duality, how things are not always as they seem, and how beauty and danger often coexist. This duality serves as a warning in the tales of the Joragumo, a reminder that appearances can be deceiving and that the world is full of hidden dangers. The Joragumo is not merely a monster to be feared. She is a symbol of the deceptive nature of desire, the way in which attraction can cloud judgment and lead to destruction. Her beauty is her weapon, and it is through this weapon that she weaves her web of deceit, drawing men into her fatal embrace. The legend of the Joragumo can be traced back to various ancient tales, many of which highlight her ability to ensnare both the body and the soul. One of the most popular stories involves a young man who, while traveling the mountains, encounters a beautiful woman in distress. She appears to be trapped or lost, and he, moved by compassion, offers to help her. But as they make their way to her home, the environment begins to change. The trees become darker, and the air grows thick with the smell of decay. As they enter her home, he realizes too late that he has been lured into a trap. The woman transforms into a giant spider, and the man is caught in her web. This particular story is a classic example of the Joragumo's deceptive nature, how she preys on the good nature of men, leading them to believe they are helping her, only to reveal her true, monstrous form once they are too close to escape. In some variations of the myth, the Joragumo's deception is not only physical but psychological as well. She is not just a beautiful woman. She is a master manipulator, capable of using her charm and wit to exploit her victims' weaknesses. Her ability to read and manipulate people makes her all the more dangerous, as she knows how to use their own desires against them. The Joragumo often targets men who are lonely, seeking companionship or adventure, and she feeds off their desire for connection. She is not merely a mindless predator. She is a cunning and intelligent being, one who understands the power of manipulation and the fragility of human emotions. The image of the Joragumo as both beautiful and deadly reflects the broader themes of transformation in Japanese folklore. Many of the most fearsome creatures in Japanese mythology are shapeshifters, beings who can transform their appearance in order to deceive, lure, or intimidate. In the case of the Joragumo, her ability to shift from a monstrous spider to a seductive woman speaks to the dual nature of desire itself. Desire is both a source of life and destruction, a powerful force that can lead to connection and love, but also to obsession and ruin. The Joragumo embodies this duality, and in her tales, she becomes a metaphor for the dangers of unchecked passion and the consequences of falling prey to illusions. In some versions of the Joragumo legend, her victims are not simply devoured or killed. Instead, the Joragumo may keep them captive, feeding off their energy and vitality over time. This slow, torturous process of consumption further emphasizes the Joragumo's ability to dominate and control, turning her victims into mere shells of their former selves. This is particularly evident in tales where the Joragumo ensnares a man for an extended period, draining him of his life force until he is little more than a hollow, lifeless figure. These stories speak to the psychological and emotional toll that desire can take, how the pursuit of something that seems beautiful or alluring can, in the end, leave one empty and broken. The Joragumo's haunting beauty is often contrasted with the desolate, eerie landscape she inhabits. Her lair is usually described as being in dark, remote places, deep in the mountains, near rivers, or in abandoned ruins. The isolation of her home reflects her own isolation as a creature of the shadows, hidden away from the human world, yet always watching, always waiting for the next unsuspecting victim to wander into her grasp. This setting also highlights the danger of venturing into unknown, wild places, where the natural world is still untamed and where supernatural forces hold sway. The Joragumo's lair is a place where the boundary between the natural and the supernatural is blurred, where beauty is intertwined with horror, and where every step could lead to destruction. While many stories about the Joragumo focus on her predatory nature, there are also tales in which she is depicted in a more tragic light. In some versions of the legend, the Joragumo is not merely a malicious demon, but a spirit who has been wronged in some way. In these stories, she may have once been a woman who was betrayed or abandoned by the man she loved, and her monstrous transformation is a result of her grief and desire for revenge. These tales add a layer of complexity to the Joragumo's character, suggesting that her deadly behavior may be born out of pain and loss. This humanizing aspect of the Joragumo offers a reflection on the destructive power of unhealed emotional wounds, how the inability to cope with betrayal, rejection, or grief can transform someone into something monstrous. The Joragumo's tale becomes a cautionary one about the dangers of letting emotions fester and the destructive consequences of seeking revenge. In other stories, the Joragumo is depicted as a more tragic figure, bound by her own desires and compulsions. In these versions of the myth, she is not an evil creature, but one caught in a cycle of transformation and destruction, unable to break free from the consequences of her own actions. This portrayal of the Joragumo highlights the idea of redemption and the possibility of breaking free from cycles of harm, though it also underscores the difficulty of doing so. The Joragumo is trapped in her own web, just as her victims are trapped in hers. She is a victim of her own desires, a being cursed by the very traits that make her so alluring and dangerous. The Joragumo remains a powerful figure in Japanese folklore, her stories continuing to captivate and haunt the imagination. She is a figure that embodies both the beauty and the danger desire, a creature whose transformation from woman to spider serves as a potent metaphor for the ways in which our desires can warp and consume us. Her tales are a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that the pursuit of what seems beautiful or alluring can, if left unchecked, lead to destruction. The Jorogumo teaches us that the line between beauty and terror is often thin, and that what we see on the surface may not always reflect what lies beneath. In the cold, desolate wilderness of Japan, where the biting wind howls through the snow-covered mountains and the world is blanketed in white, there's a spirit whose presence sends chills down the spine of even the bravest of souls. The Yuki-onna, or Snow Woman, a being of ethereal beauty and deadly cold. The Yuki-onna embodies the harsh and unforgiving aspects of winter, as well as the deep mysteries of the human heart. She is both a figure of immense grace and a terror to those who encounter her icy presence marking the line between life and death. The Yuki-onna is not just a ghostly apparition, but a symbol of nature's power, the fleeting beauty of snow, and the fragility of human existence in the face of the natural world's wrath. The Yuki-onna is typically described as a beautiful woman, pale and ghostly, with long, flowing black hair and eyes that gleam with an unsettling, otherworldly light. Her skin is said to be as white as the snow that surrounds her, and her presence is accompanied by an intense, unnatural chill in the air. Some stories describe her as wearing a white kimono, blending seamlessly with the snow, making her nearly invisible until it is too late to escape her grasp. She is often depicted as a mysterious and silent figure, drifting silently through snowstorms or emerging from blizzards, as though she is part of the very storm itself. Her beauty is captivating, and yet it is the very thing that makes her dangerous, for the Yuki-onna uses her allure to lure unsuspecting travelers into her cold embrace. The origins of the Yuki-onna can be traced back to centuries-old tales from Japan's rural and mountainous regions, where harsh winters and unpredictable weather created an environment filled with both awe and fear. In these stories, the Yuki-onna was often seen as a harbinger of death, an omen of the cold that would claim the lives of those who ventured too far into the snow-covered wilderness. In some versions of myth, the Yuki-onna is said to appear on snowy nights, when the air is thick with frost and the wind bites at the skin. She may appear as a lone figure, standing amidst the snowdrifts, or she may silently follow travelers who are lost or stranded in the storm. The Yuki-onna's presence is always felt before the scene, a coldness in the air, a silence that seems to fall over everything, as if nature itself holds its breath. In many of the traditional stories, the Yuki-onna is depicted as a supernatural being who can freeze her victims with a single touch. Her cold breath is said to be enough to turn flesh to ice, and those who are caught in her gaze may find themselves slowly succumbing to her icy embrace. Her methods of killing are as cold and calculating as her nature. She may freeze her victims outright, or she may lead them deeper into the snow, where they will succumb to the elements. In some tales, she is said to leave behind a trail of frozen bodies, her victims left as statues of ice, forever preserved in the frigid grip of winter. These stories reflect the stark reality of life in harsh climates, where the snow and cold could take a person's life without warning, and where the beauty of nature could turn deadly in an instant. Despite her lethal nature, the Yuki-onna is not always a purely malevolent spirit. In some versions of myth, she is portrayed as a tragic figure, a woman cursed to wander the earth for eternity, bound to cold and the snow by an unseen force. In these stories, the Yuki-onna may appear as a lost soul, one who was once a mortal woman who died during a harsh winter or was left to perish by a cruel fate. Her transformation into a spirit is often depicted as a result of an unfulfilled love, a broken promise, or a tragedy that has left her wandering the snowy wilderness in search of something, whether it be redemption, love, or a sense of peace. In these versions of myth, the Yuki-onna is not simply a killer, but a lost soul whose existence is defined by pain and longing. One of the most famous versions of a Yuki-onna story involves a young man who, while traveling in a snowstorm, encounters the spirit of the Snow Woman. She appears to him, beautiful and serene, and, despite the freezing cold, she does not harm him. Instead, she speaks to him in a calm, soft voice, and warns him of the danger he is in. In some versions of the tale, the Yuki-onna spares the man's life, on the condition that he never speaks of their encounter to anyone. In this version of the story, the Yuki-onna shows a glimmer of compassion, a sign that beneath her icy exterior lies a heart capable of tenderness and mercy. However, the man, moved by his encounter with the beautiful spirit, eventually breaks his promise and tells another person of what happened. The Yuki-onna, angered by this betrayal, returns to claim his life, freezing him with her cold touch. This story highlights the theme of broken promises and the consequences of dishonoring trust, as well as the tragic nature of the Yuki-ana's existence. She is a spirit bound by rules and bound to cold, unable to escape the curse that defines her existence. In other stories, the Yuki-ana's motives are even more mysterious and complex. She may appear as a temptress, using her beauty to seduce men, only to freeze them in their tracks or lead them to their deaths in the snow. Her cold, calculating demeanor represents the harshness of nature and the danger that comes with succumbing to temptation. The Yuki-ana's ability to appear as a helpless, innocent woman is a key element of her power. By presenting herself as something to be desired, she lures her victims into a false sense of security before revealing her true, deadly nature. In these versions of the story, the Yuki-ana symbolizes the dangers of unbridled desire and the consequences of falling for illusions, especially when those illusions come wrapped in beauty and charm. Interestingly, some versions of the Yuki-ana myth offer a redemptive twist, where the spirit of the Snow Woman is not necessarily bound to a path of death and destruction. In these variations, the Yuki-ana is depicted as a figure who, over time, can be freed from her icy curse, or who may find peace through acts of kindness or compassion. One popular tale involved a man who encounters a Yuki-ana in the snow, but instead of falling victim to her touch, he shows her empathy and warmth. In some stories, this gesture is enough to break her curse, allowing her to return to a more peaceful existence. These tales suggest that even the coldest, most unyielding spirits can be thawed by human kindness, offering a hopeful counterpoint to the otherwise grim nature of the Yuki-ana legend. In modern times, the Yuki-ana continues to be a powerful symbol in Japanese culture, appearing in literature, films, and television. She remains a haunting figure, representing the cold beauty of winter and the unpredictable, sometimes deadly nature of the natural world. Her dual nature, as both a deadly force and tragic spirit, continues to resonate with audiences, reminding them of the fragile balance between life and death, beauty and danger. The Yuki-ana is a timeless figure, one whose story speaks to the depths of human emotion and the complexities of the natural world. She teaches us that beneath the surface of things, there are often hidden truths, and that even the most beautiful and serene of forces can be dangerous and unpredictable. The Yuki-ana's legend serves as a reminder of the power of nature, the fleeting beauty of snow, and the fragility of human life in the face of forces far greater than ourselves. Her story is one of beauty, danger, and ultimately, the haunting stillness of winter, a season that can both create and destroy, bringing with it the promise of renewal, but also the threat of an eternal, frozen death. Whether seen as a malevolent spirit, a tragic soul, or a figure of transformation, the Yuki-ana remains an enduring symbol of the mysteries of the cold, a spirit that captures the imagination and continues to chill the hearts of those who encounter her tale. In the quiet corners of Japanese folklore, where the line between the seen and unseen is often blurred, there exists a creature whose presence is both disorienting and eerie, the narrated. This supernatural being is a master of stealth, capable of slipping unnoticed into the everyday life of humans, and yet, when it is seen, it evokes a sense of profound discomfort. Known for its strange, unsettling appearance and its mischievous, often malevolent behavior, the narrated has been a subject of fascination in Japanese mythology for centuries. This creature embodies the themes of deception, identity, and the uncanny, offering a reflection on the mysterious and unpredictable nature of the world around us. The narrated is most often described as an elderly man with an elongated, grotesque face, though its appearance can vary depending on the region and the tale. In many accounts, it is depicted as a creature with the body of a human, but the head of a strange, featureless being or an old, wrinkled face, reminiscent of a hermit or an ascetic monk. Its most distinguishing characteristic, however, is its ability to sneak into human homes undetected, often taking the place of the homeowner or family member. The narrated has a particular affinity for blending into the household and behaving in ways that would confuse or unsettle those who encounter it. It is often said to walk around the house, drinking tea or eating food, behaving as though it belongs, all the while with an air of arrogance, as though the home is now its own. It might even go so far as to take up residence in a home, creating a sense of unease and disarray in the household. Unlike many other yokai in Japanese mythology, The narrated does not have a specific predatory agenda. It does not hunt or cause direct harm in the way that other spirits, such as a Uri ghost, might. Instead, the narrated is a trickster, a spirit that thrives on causing confusion, mischief, and discomfort. Its presence is not necessarily one of violence, but one of intrusion and disorientation. The narrated behavior can be likened to a subtle form of psychological disruption, as it creates a sense of wrongness without ever being directly threatening. It is this quiet, insidious nature that makes the narrated particularly unsettling. Its ability to be both invisible and omnipresent, slipping in and out of human lives without leaving a trace of its passage. The narrated is often described as a creature of the night, appearing under the cover of darkness when the home is quiet and still. It is said to enter through cracks in the walls or doors, moving silently and swiftly. When it is seen, it is often noted for its calm, detached demeanor, as though it has no particular interest in the people around it. This lack of concern for its surroundings only adds to its eerie nature, as it moves freely through spaces that are meant to be private and protected. The narrated has no need for approval or acceptance. It simply exists where it pleases, doing as it will. Its behavior is a reflection of the chaotic and unpredictable forces that sometimes find their way into the most ordered of lives, disrupting the normal rhythms of daily existence. The folklore surrounding the narrated varies from region to region, but the central theme remains constant. The creature is an intruder, a being who enters human spaces and behaves in ways that feel deeply unnatural. In some versions of the tale, the narrated is said to enter homes and impersonate a family member or servant, wandering around the house as if it belongs there. It may even take the place of the master of the house, sitting at the table and drinking tea, while the true residents are left bewildered and unsettled. In these stories, the narrated does not speak much, if at all, and its actions are often silent, making it all the more unsettling. Its presence is a reminder of the fragility of human life, and the way in which the boundaries between the known and the unknown can sometimes slip and blur without warning. Despite its disturbing nature, the narrated is not entirely malevolent. In some versions of myth, the creature is simply a wanderer, a being that roams from home to home, seeking solace or amusement in the quiet corners of human existence. Its antics may cause confusion or frustration, but they rarely result in outright harm. This lack of direct malice makes the narrated an oddity among yokai, as many other creatures in Japanese folklore are driven by vengeance, fear, or the desire for destruction. The narrated, in contrast, is a creature of curiosity, driven by a desire to experience the world in ways that humans cannot fully understand. It does not seek to cause chaos for the sake of harm, but rather because it finds amusement in the confusion it creates. The narrated's role as a trickster figure is significant in Japanese mythology, where trickster spirits are often used to illustrate the complexity of human nature. Tricksters are rarely wholly good or wholly evil. They exist in a space between order and disorder, challenging established norms and expectations. The narrated serves as a reminder that not all spirits are bound by the same moral frameworks that govern human behavior. Its actions are not necessarily malevolent, but they are certainly unsettling, and in this way, it challenges human notions of control and order. The narrated reminds us that the world is not always predictable, and that there are forces, seen and unseen, that can intrude upon our lives without explanation. In some variations of the myth, the narrated is also portrayed as a shapeshifter, capable of changing its appearance or assuming different identities. This ability to shift forms adds to the creature's sense of mystery and danger, as it can blend into various roles and environments. Its true nature is always hidden, and even when it is caught or confronted, it may simply disappear or vanish, leaving behind no trace of its existence. This elusiveness makes the narrated a creature that is difficult to understand, as it refuses to be categorized or pinned down. It exists as a reminder of the unknowable aspects of the world, those elements of life that cannot be controlled or fully understood. Despite the narrated's tendency to cause mischief, it is not universally feared. In fact, some stories suggest that the narrated can be an ally to those who are wise or discerning enough to understand its nature. Some versions of the tale suggest that the narrated may help people who show kindness or patience, or it may simply leave them be if it senses no harm in their actions. This more benevolent side of the narrated reflects the complexity of its character. While it is disruptive and unnerving, it is not wholly malicious. It is a creature that lives on the margins of human understanding, existing in a space that is neither fully evil nor fully good. Its unpredictable nature challenges the very notion of what it means to be good or evil, reminding us that the world is full of gray areas, and that some forces exist outside of our control or comprehension. The narrated is also a symbol of the unknown, the strange, and the uncanny forces that can enter our lives without warning. Its presence represents the intrusion of the inexplicable, the moments when we find ourselves disoriented or confused by something that doesn't quite belong. In a way, the narrated is embodiment of the uncanny itself, something that is both familiar and unsettling, something that feels out of place in the world around us. It reminds us that the boundaries between the human world and the supernatural are often thin and porous, and that the unknown can sometimes slip in when we least expect it. In modern culture, the narrated continues to be a figure of intrigue, often appearing in literature, art, and film. Its depiction as a creature of both mischief and mystery makes it a compelling subject for exploration, and its ability to blend into human life makes it a symbol of the hidden forces that shape our lives. Whether viewed as a playful spirit, a trickster, or a figure of unsettling strangeness, the narrated remains a potent reminder of the unpredictability of the world and the forces that exist just beyond our understanding. Deep within the darker corners of Japanese folklore exists a terrifying, grotesque figure known as the jikininki, a spirit whose very nature challenges the boundaries between life and death, humanity and monstrosity. Unlike many other ghosts and spirits in Japanese mythology, the jikininki is not just an apparition haunting the living. It is something far more sinister, a revenant or a ghost, bound to a ghastly and horrifying fate, driven by an insatiable hunger for human flesh. These terrifying beings are not the restless spirits of the dead, but rather twisted figures that serve as a reminder of the corruption and decay that can occur when a human soul is consumed by greed, guilt, or dishonor. The jikininki's tale is one of desperation and decay, a cautionary reminder of the perils that await those who stray too far from the righteous path. The jikininki are often described as emaciated, ghastly figures, their bodies gaunt and skeletal, with sunken eyes and hollowed faces, reflecting the haunting nature of their existence. Their appearance is often likened to that of a corpse that has been freshly exhumed or a creature that has long been deprived of sustenance. However, despite their ghastly appearance, the jikininki are not simply passive figures of terror. They are active, predatory spirits, driven by an overwhelming desire to consume human flesh. In some versions of the legend, these spirits are depicted as cannibalistic beings who stalk graveyards, cemeteries, and other places where the dead are buried, feeding off the flesh of the recently deceased. Their hunger is not simply for sustenance. It is a compulsion, a curse that binds them to their ghostly existence. The origins of the jikininki legend can be traced to ancient Japanese beliefs surrounding death, the afterlife, and the moral consequences of one's actions in life. In some versions of myth, the jikininki were once humans who, through acts of greed, selfishness, or dishonor, became cursed after death. They may have been corrupt individuals who lived their lives in pursuit of wealth or power, causing harm to others along the way. These individuals, unable to find peace in the afterlife, were condemned to return as jikininki, flesh-eating spirits who are forever tormented by their insatiable hunger. In other stories, the curse of the jikininki is seen as a result of a specific sin or transgression, such as the act of eating human flesh and life, leading to their transformation into these dreadful beings after death. What sets the jikininki apart from other ghostly creatures in Japanese folklore is the nature of their curse. Most spirits in folklore are driven by a desire for vengeance, unfinished business, or a need for closure. The jikininki, however, are motivated by an all-consuming hunger that can never be satisfied. This insatiable desire for flesh is not just a physical craving, but a manifestation of the spiritual decay that has overtaken them. It is a constant reminder of their fall from grace, how the sins they committed in life have corrupted them beyond repair. In some interpretations, the jikininki are seen as reflections of the soul's deepest, darkest impulses, desires so corrupt and all-consuming that they distort the very essence of their being. The jikininki's hunger is not limited to the living, but extends to the dead as well. In many stories, These spirits are said to feast on the bodies of the deceased, particularly those who have died under tragic or violent circumstances. They are drawn to the scent of death, and their ravenous appetite can only be sated by consuming the flesh of the recently dead. This predatory nature is both horrifying and poignant, for it speaks to the ultimate degradation of the human spirit. These spirits have descended so far into darkness that they now feed on the very essence of life itself, symbolizing the complete corruption of the soul and the inability to find redemption or peace. In some versions of myth, the Jikininki is portrayed as an isolated figure wandering the night in search of fresh corpses to feed upon. In others, they are said to be bound to specific locations, such as graveyards, where they haunt the resting places of the dead. The Jikininki may wander among the graves, searching for signs of fresh death, their presence often unnoticed by the living. However, their hunger is always present, and their actions are a constant reminder of the thin line between life and death, between the living and the dead. They serve as a symbol of the insidious nature of corruption. How, once one has fallen into darkness, there is no turning back, no escaping the consequences of one's actions. One of the most chilling aspects of the Jikininki legend is the idea that these spirits are often unaware of their own monstrous nature. In many stories, the Jikininki is depicted as a tragic figure, once a human being, who is now doomed to wander the earth in search of flesh. They may not fully comprehend the extent of their transformation, and their actions are driven by a primal instinct rather than conscious malice. In this way, the Jikininki becomes a metaphor for the loss of humanity. They are no longer capable of feeling empathy or compassion, and their existence is marked only by their insatiable hunger. This portrayal suggests that the path to becoming a Jikininki is not a deliberate choice, but rather a result of a slow, insidious spiritual degradation, a gradual descent into darkness that consumes the individual piece by piece until nothing remains but the hunger itself. In some stories, the Jikininki is depicted as being aware of its curse, a self-aware spirit that recognizes the monstrosity of its actions. This self-awareness brings with it a sense of despair, as the Jikininki is trapped in a cycle of consumption and regret, forever haunted by the knowledge that it cannot escape its fate. This tragic awareness gives the Jikininki a unique place in Japanese folklore, as it is not just a malevolent creature, but a tortured soul bound by its own actions. The Jikininki represents the ultimate consequence of living a life devoid of compassion or honor, a warning about the dangers of unchecked greed and selfishness. Its hunger is a reflection of the emptiness that comes from living without regard for others, a metaphor for the moral and spiritual emptiness that arises when one becomes consumed by desires that have no end. Interestingly, some versions of the Jikininki myth also offer a possible path for redemption, though it is rarely achieved. In some stories, the Jikininki may seek out a compassionate person who can help free it from its curse. This act of redemption, however, is not easily attained. The Jikininki must first recognize the wrongs it has committed in life, and only then can it be released from its insatiable hunger. This element of redemption suggests that the Jikininki's curse is not purely a punishment, but a reflection of the spirit's inability to reconcile with its past actions. In these stories, the Jikininki becomes a symbol of the possibility of redemption, even for the most lost and tormented of souls, though it is a path fraught with difficulty and anguish. The Jikininki remains one of the most disturbing figures in Japanese folklore, a being whose hunger for flesh reflects the darkest aspects of the human soul. Its insatiable desire for consumption, whether the living or the dead, serves as a chilling reminder of the consequences of moral decay and the inability to find peace. As a creature bound to the earth by its own actions, the Jikininki exemplifies the ultimate corruption of the soul, a warning about the dangers of selfishness, greed, and the rejection of compassion. In the end, the Jikininki is not just a ghostly figure, but a symbol of the moral and spiritual consequences of living without honor, a figure whose very existence serves as a testament to the cost of failing to live a life of integrity and compassion. In the silence of the night, when the world is cloaked in darkness and the shadows stretch long over the land, there exists a creature whose appearance can both fascinate and terrify. The Rokuro Kubi is a supernatural being of duality, a creature whose form is both human and monstrous, shifting in ways that defy the natural laws of the world. Known for their ability to stretch and contort their necks to unnatural lengths, the Rokuro Kubi story has long captured the imagination of the Japanese people, blending elements of the eerie, the grotesque, and the mysterious. This creature embodies the fear of the unknown, the terror of transformation, and the unsettling feeling of seeing something that appears human, but is fundamentally otherworldly. The Rokuro-kubi is often depicted as a beautiful woman by day, living among humans and blending into the world as an ordinary person. Her beauty is enchanting, and she may lead a life much like anyone else's, working, socializing, or simply existing in the quiet spaces of daily life. It is at night, however, when the Rokuro-kubi reveals her true nature. By nightfall, the transformation begins, and her human form becomes something far more disturbing. The most striking feature of the Rokuro-kubi is her ability to stretch her neck to terrifying lengths, often far beyond the bounds of human anatomy. Her neck may stretch like a serpent's, extending through windows or doorways, or it may slither into dark corners of a room, creeping toward her unsuspecting victims. The sight of a Rokuro-kubi in this monstrous state is enough to send a chill down the spine, as it is a manifestation of hidden, horrifying truth that beneath the surface of ordinary life, there can be something dark and unsettling waiting to reveal itself. The Rokuro-kubi is a shapeshifter, capable of not only elongating her neck, but also of transforming into other, more grotesque forms. In some stories, the Rokuro-kubi is described as being able to stretch her entire body, growing tall and thin, or even shifting into a more terrifying, demon-like form. These transformations are often accompanied by an unsettling sense of wrongness, as the Rokuro-kubi's body moves in ways that no human body should be able to. Her physical flexibility and her ability to change shape represent the tension between the human and the monstrous, the idea that what appears normal may hide something far more terrifying. In these stories, the Rokuro-kubi's transformation is not simply a physical one. It is a metaphor for the duality of human nature, the fact that beneath the mask of civility and normalcy, there may be something far darker lurking within. In some versions of the myth, the Rokuro-kubi is portrayed as a spirit cursed by a supernatural power, forced to undergo this transformation every night. In these tales, the curse is often tied to the Rokuro-kubi's past actions, whether they involve greed, betrayal, or failure to honor a moral code. The curse of the Rokuro-kubi is a reminder of the moral consequences that come from living a life of selfishness or dishonor. The transformation that occurs each night reflects the inner corruption of the spirit, a sign that the Rokuro-kubi have become disconnected from the purity of her human form and has descended into something darker, something monstrous. This transformation also serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of hidden desires or actions that may seem innocuous on the surface, but are, in fact, deeply corrupting. The Rokuro-kubi is also often depicted as a creature driven by a peculiar kind of hunger, one that may not always be physical but is rooted in a more insidious longing. In some stories, the Rokuro-kubi is drawn to the lives of others, sneaking into their homes and observing them, her elongated neck slithering through walls and windows to watch them as they sleep. This voyeuristic tendency reflects the Rokuro-kubi's need for something more than just flesh. It is a desire to feed off the energy or the essence of others, to drain them of their vitality by watching them in their most vulnerable state.